Well, to all my Facebook friends, you guys on YouTube out there, I'm still in rehab over at Washington Regional and called Self Health, or Health South. Hope to get out pretty soon, but I'll give you a little discourse on the Great White Throne Judgment. Revelation chapter 20, verse 11. John, as God gave him revelation while he was on the Isle of Patmos, he said, I, John. He said he saw that holy city, but he, in 20th chapter, 11th verse, he said, and I saw a great white throne, and him that sat on it, from whose face the heavens and earth fled away from, they found no place for them. And you drop down to verse chapter 20, he said he saw a new heaven and a new earth. The first heaven and the first earth had passed away. But up there, when he's talking about the great white throne, this will happen immediately after the Great Tribulation and the Battle of Armageddon. What will happen leading up to that, the church will be raptured out before the Great Tribulation. Matthew calls it a Great Tribulation. Mark calls it a time of affliction. And Luke 21, he calls it a time of vengeance. In Jeremiah chapter 30, verse 7, he calls it a time of Jacob's trouble or Israel's trouble. It's not the church's trouble. The reason for that is there was a 7-year covenant to be signed. The Antichrist will offer Israel peace for 7 years and break it in the middle of that would be 3.5 years. The reason for 3.5 years is for that's the amount of time that Christ walked this earth after being baptized by John and preached his message to them, but Israel refused him for 3.5 years. Because he's raised in Israel, he came to his own received him not. But as many as received him, gave him power to become the sons of God. So at this time, every 3.5 years, the Antichrist will be turned loose on Israel because of the rejection of Christ. But God has given us an escape. Luke chapter 21:36, he says, watch and pray that you be accounted worthy to escape all this is coming on earth. And then he tells about it in 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, verse 13, on down about the catching away of the bride. And what will happen at the catching away, if you read Isaiah chapter 26, verse 19, it tells us that the dead will come out of their graves and go into the marriage chamber. He calls it a chamber, a marriage chamber, which is a marriage supper of the Lamb. You find it in Revelation 19. But Isaiah 26:19 calls it a time of indignation, where that God will let the Antichrist deal with Israel for their rejection of Christ for 3.5 years. But after it's all said and done, we'll be called out of here as a church. We will come back, Zechariah chapter 14, verse 1 through 5. He shall gather all nations. Now the word all right there is figuratively. All nations, all the nations under the Antichrist's rule will be gathered against Jerusalem to battle. This is when Armageddon will start, and the Battle of Megiddo. And so there's 10 nations that will give their power to the Antichrist. These are the nations that's going to come against Israel. And I haven't got time to put this on there, all the do's and don'ts about the nations. They're from Babylon to Babylon. And you study in the book of Daniel and find the nations. But anyway, after it's all said and done, after the Armageddon, there will be the great white throne judgment. And he said, I saw a great white heaven, earth, and the sea gave up the dead which were in it. And then he said the books are open. Now when he said the books are open, that means everybody's writing a book. Angels are keeping record of books. Whether we know it or not, we're writing a book. On that day, those books will be open. Every man will be judged out of those books written in therein. And then he goes down a little bit further. He said, and whosoever, another book was opened, which is called the book of life. Whosoever not found written in it will be cast in the lake of fire. So there will be 4 things. At the end of this thing, there will be a new heaven, a new earth, a new Jerusalem, and a lake of fire. But there's going to be a great court take place on that day, the great white throne judgment. There'll be a court take place. It's kind of like I heard a story years ago about a shoeshine boy tell a story about a court going on out in Texas. They had a young man had done an awful deed that was punishable by death. Stood there in the courtroom, and the judge pronounced sentence on him, and it was death. And his mother screamed and set cold chills all through the courtroom. On that day, as far as the eye could see, there will be people. Hitler will be there. Judas will be there. People that rejected Christ will be there on that day. And the nations, Matthew 24, chapter 25, talks about the goat nations and sheep nations. Nations will be judged. But he said every man will be judged out of those books. Well, at this time, it's very important to make peace with God before all this takes place, because it's going to be bad. Roy Acuff and Hank Williams all sang a song called "The Great White Throne." He said, "I dreamed that I dreamed that about the Great White Throne." He said, "I dreamed that all nations were gathered to judgment before the throne." He said, "From the throne came a bright shining angel, and put a foot on the land and on sea, and swore with his hand raised to heaven, the time will no longer be." And then he goes on to talk about some more things. He said the great man was there, but his greatness was left so far behind, for the angel that opened the record, no trace of his greatness could find. And then he goes ahead and said the gambler was there, and the drunkard, and the man that had sold him the drink, and the man that had sold him the license, together in hell they did sink. And then he goes on to say, "Oh, what weeping and wailing, as the lost were told of their fate. They cried to the rocks and the mountains, but they prayed and their prayers were too late." He said the widow was there and the orphan. God heard, remembered their cry. Though sorrow in heaven forever, God wiped all the tears from their eyes. And then, there's going to be people of all races there on that day, of all kinds, that day of reckoning day, a day of judgment. And that time, God's not going to say, "Well done," if it hadn't been well done. I think of a song I heard back in the 50s, and it's got the same tune as "You Are My Sunshine," and it talks about that time. It said, "The other night, friends, as I was praying, a vision fair was given me. I saw the Lord in clouds descending to set his waiting children free. He came in glory with saints around him. He said, 'Love, let's steal away.' And in a moment the graves were opened, and he took his bride and sailed away. I saw a baby that left its mother. With empty arms she cried, 'Lord, wait, and I'll get ready to go to heaven,' but her cries had come too late. I saw the fire roll and I heard the thunder. As tribulations gripped this world, the rocks and mountains rent asunder, as God's great judgments on sin were hurled. So come to Jesus, you're all confessing, and get your soul washed white as snow, and when he calls you, you can answer, 'Come, dear Lord, I'm ready to go.' So there's coming a reckoning day to every man, woman, boy, and girl. Write the book, and the books are open. But there's a big book open, it's called the Book of Life. That's where I want my name to be. That's where your name needs to be. I'll leave that thought with you today. Thanks for listening.